I returned to London after working in Paris on the 8th of March 2020. On the 23rd of March, the UK went into its first national lockdown due to COVID-19. The entertainment and fitness industries closed and we were told to stay home. Like many others in this industry, the work that I had lined up for the year ahead was first postponed and then eventually cancelled. I was watching an industry that I'd been a part of for 20 years just collapse around me.
It's just been such a big wave of emotions. Like from the start, just thinking, oh, lovely little 2-week break. Little did we know that it was going to carry on for this long.
I've not really spoken to anyone who has said it has been one thing or the other. Like, I think there's been both super low lows and also some really rare and useful time for introspection, which I guess we don't really get very often. It's been tough, but it's been tough in ways that have turned into something.
I became aware of how the Dance Network were using the social media platforms to motivate, encourage and support each other. That was probably one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen in my life. They were fighting to survive, fighting for control. They were fighting for control of a future that they had no control over. On the 24th of March, I redesigned and delivered my first company class online. Delivering class to your phone is a lonely experience. You are staring at a blank screen or a reflection of yourself. You don't have the rapport that you would do in a studio. You don't get that visual feedback. And I guess creatively I was starved. And I was also wondering, is there anything more I could be doing?
There has been just nothing. It's been like a wasteland of waiting for something to happen. And for some people that's been a great boost of creativity. That's been a complete slump into depression. That's been, God, I'm so grateful for this time to just do nothing. And at the beginning, it was kind of like social media just took off and everybody was sort of trying to help each other and doing online classes. And, we thought it was a short-term thing. So it was just kind of like, let's just keep morale going.
The people that were living in London for employment opportunities had returned home. And it was the time that they devoted to class online that was keeping us connected. And it was that connection that sparked the idea that I could give these people more than class. I could provide a creative opportunity. I could give them a purpose. I could create a dance film and turn the world into a rehearsal studio and give the illusion that we're dancing in the same space at the same time. When working on a large project with a huge amount of people, it feels like you're organising a massive puzzle. And you need to be in control of that puzzle. I came up with the idea that if we taped a metre square on the floor, we could efficiently navigate, move and organise bodies around the space. I'd never done anything like this before, so we needed to make a prototype. We didn't want to go into this not knowing whether it would work. So I contacted my assistant, Jordan Livesey, and a couple of dancers. We filmed some choreography, and alongside my editor, Greg Bernstein, we worked to stitch it together to see if it would be a success. The project was announced after company class on the 31st of March. The filming responsibilities for the project were left in the hands of the dancers. We needed to guarantee a successful edit, so on the 4th of April, Greg produced an instructional video highlighting the requirements we needed. There was no time to exchange notes or send videos back and forth. There was no time for cleanup calls. The videos I sent out were mathematical and gave the artists all the information they needed to download the choreography and to deliver the movement accurately. On the 8th of May, the dance film was released with the title Tracing Movement Together. The response we received was amazing. but it wasn't meant to be a platform to showcase my work. So receiving praise for something that was meant to be a lifeline, well, that feels strange. But what we managed to achieve in that short period of time with no money and no support, that was excellent.
I was incredibly grateful to be able to train online. I did go through a period where I didn't want to dance. As an educator, I couldn't stand teaching online. I missed being in a room. I didn't feel like I could give even an ounce of what I could give when I was in person with students. Dancers are insanely resilient, and sometimes to our own detriment.
Tuesday the 19th of May was my final class online. I stopped because I felt like I wasn't able to deliver the class that I wanted to, and I wasn't receiving what I needed from the class either, so I stopped. That was the best thing I could have done for my creative practice, for me and for my company. I was exhausted. The national lockdown in the UK was extended, and we became aware that the closure of the theatrical industry would flow into 2021. And that's really painful to know that even if the world restarts, that our industry would be left behind.
I have my health, I have a roof over my head, and I have my family. So there is that on one very, very major side, and then on the other side there is a lack of complete support and understanding or recognition for anyone in our industry.
The downtime that I needed during May was maybe like a lot of other people. I spent evaluating my life, evaluating my career, evaluating what I wanted, what I didn't want, and evaluating how much control my career had over my life. On the 15th of June, Tamara Rocco of the English National Ballet reported that her dancers need 3 months to be stage ready. On the 10th of July, Studio Wayne McGregor announced a reset programme to support contemporary dancers venture back into action. There was no equivalent support for the freelance theatre and commercial dance network, or dancers that weren't attached to a company. My own company, Tracing Movement, was founded in 2013, initially to provide free class for professional dancers in exchange for the chance for me to create movement on them. So now I'm thinking, could I somehow give free class and provide an opportunity for these forgotten dancers as we transitioned out of lockdown? On the 22nd of July, Arts Council England reopened their project grant funding stream. We submitted an application with 4 points of focus. Reboot the London Dance Network, integrate graduates from the 2020 cohort, employ 6 professional dancers to create a dance film highlighting dark theatres in London, and document the whole process. It will be called Tracing Movement Reboot. Two private donations came in, and Jerwood Space were able to support our programme. This suddenly made everything possible. We were quick to pivot, and the week that followed went into fast forward. We contacted dance conservatoires to submit students from the 2020 graduating year. We reached out to a selection of professional dancers to check their availability for the Reboot programme. We contracted James Harris to create a documentary. We confirmed Theatre Royal Stratford East as the location for the dance film. We organised a site visit and aligned with their COVID rules and regulations. We established our PR, including a promotional press release. Robin Kent Photography was contracted to capture the content before and during the process. Stefano Ancora was confirmed as our musician, providing live music for the classes. Benjamin Thomas, Director of Photography. Greg Bernstein, Editor, Costume, Insurance, Release Forms, Agents, Legal Contracts. Everything was organised in 5 days. How's that for transferable skills? Reboot had to be COVID safe, and our risk assessment had to align with the rules and regulations given to us by Jerwood Space. Thinking back to tracing movement together, the meter square that we used as a creative tool to pull dancers together and make tracing movement together actually happen is now being used everywhere to keep people and dancers apart and safe. On Monday the 19th of October, we began the Tracing Movement Reboot at Jerwood Space, London. When you mention class to a dancer, you're met with a variety of responses. I think too many dancers have a bad relationship with class, and when designing a class or considering to become a teacher, you have a responsibility to take that into consideration. It's a question I'm working through myself. Why do so many dancers have a bad relationship with class? And is this bad relationship with class or dance itself? The dancer's experience is always at the forefront of my mind when delivering class. I want them to be challenged in a way that they're learning and progressing, but not completely collapsing or failing. Because it can be painful, especially in a training situation or in a training establishment when you're constantly working, progressing, and evolving as a student. Every day you have a different challenge or a different pattern or a different set of steps that you have to learn, and you have to be improving at a certain level, or perhaps you attend a certain college or a school that has a reputation. You're carrying all of these things with you into every class. You're facing yourself in the mirror all the time, and you're meant to be this perfect athlete, this beautiful artist that can do anything, and you've got mistakes and faults staring back at you. If you're not careful, then that can be really damaging.
I don't know if I've ever trained with someone like Stuart. Stuart's an educator, and that promotes people understanding how to work with what they have, which is the healthiest way we can approach our own training. And I think that is really special, A, because you get the absolute most out of that kind of training, and B, because Stu has so much facility as a dancer, and he's worked really hard for it, but he is incredibly technical and gifted and a beautiful mover. And for somebody who moves like that so instinctively, to be able to communicate for everyone who doesn't necessarily have that facility is such a gift.
As a professional dancer, it's good to check in with the reason that you're dancing. Who are you dancing for? Are you dancing for the teacher or the choreographer to notice you, or just because they're telling you to? Are you dancing in an audition, fighting for a job, proving yourself as an artist and as a performer, proving your abilities for someone else to employ you? Are you dancing because you spent £10 on a class and you're bullying yourself to get value for money? Are you dancing as part of a warm-up for a show in the evening? These are all valid reasons to be dancing, and I'm sure every dancer has these thoughts. But if you take away the teacher, or the cost, or the fight, or the show, you're just left with yourself. And for me, that's the most important thing. To dance for yourself, with yourself, and by yourself. I wanted the Reboot classes to be free so dancers could do it for themselves. To have a quiet moment for them to communicate with their bodies, taking away the finances or the pressure of an audition or the pressure of a show. The pressure of a teacher making you do steps. It's actually really freeing. If you enable the dancer just to have time to talk to their body, they're going to have a great experience.
The fact that it's free is amazing, because it feels like someone is on your side saying that what you're doing is worth something. It's like gold, because to be valued at the same level as the ballet and contemporary world is just amazing that someone is willing to help us reboot and get back to where we were before, to be able to do our jobs again safely. Yeah, it's amazing. I do feel like there is an imbalance in the level of support for what we do, and I feel like Stuart is a pioneer for trying to cross that or bridge that gap.
unbelievable. And yet at the same time, knowing Stuart, I almost expected nothing less. Not expecting it for free, but I knew that he would do everything in his power to provide for his family.
I feel like the people that are here are choosing to be here, and obviously because it's funded, there's a different kind of energy. So it's not you pay your £12 and you try and get the front of the class because you've paid your money. It's just like a company class full of, it feels like a family. This should be happening all over, in Leeds, in Scotland, everywhere. This should be happening. It's wonderful, like taking the bow today at the end of class. I just got quite emotional because I haven't had the opportunity to do that in a few months, in about 6 months. Thank goodness for Stuart.
The design of my class runs with 3 elements in mind: past, present, and future. The past part of class is the ability to work through your body using pathways and exercises that you know and have done before. You're able to have a conversation with yourself through a warm-up and exercises that are familiar. How am I feeling today? How's my spine today? Am I limited with my rotation on one side more than the other? How's my Achilles feeling? How are the soles of my feet? How do my shins feel? How are my knees? Are they warm? Do they feel stiff? You're covering work that you've done before, and you're identifying why it might feel different today. The present part is that moment when you start challenging your mind and your body with new exercises and new choreographic material. I might create a travelling adage, or a tendu pirouette, or a grand battement that turns, or something that moves from the diagonal or stage left to stage right. It's fresh for that class, challenging you and your pickup and performance skills in the moment. I include choreographic combinations into the present part as well. How do you challenge yourself today, and how do you apply your artistry to your practice? The final part of class, the future, which I'm quite passionate about, is the time that you take after the present moment, the cooling down or the love that you give yourself after class that enables you to repeat it again tomorrow. You need longevity and consistency. By not spending time at the end of class, cooling down, or just mindfully evaluating your practice, how are you able to realize your progress? These 3 key points enable you to train the artist, the athlete, and the human. You've got these 3 pillars that form a foundation of the design of my class.
Stu always has the dancer's best interests at heart. He will always go for that rather than, does that look amazing and interesting? It's always first about the dancer.
What I love about Stu's class is that, what's like a great verb that he uses? Oh, he's like, spill the torso to the front, where the action isn't, okay, and straighten the legs and stretch forward. It's almost like the verbiage that he uses makes you engage your muscles in a much more accessible way.
His warm-up and his layout of the class is all geared towards building up to performing, or building up to doing a routine where it's choreography. You've got to let everything go. You've got to just let that technique go and just dance. But the structure of the class is so unlike many other teachers that have kind of no regard for the way that the body is made and what the body needs to be strong, what the body needs to support the movement that we're asked to do these days. He's just so knowledgeable in that respect, and you respect him for that because you feel good doing it.
This is something that you don't really get in class, that it felt like he was there for us rather than there for himself. I felt like everybody in the room also was there for themselves rather than being there to prove to someone else, or prove to the teacher, or prove to the choreographer, etc.
It's just a combination of everything you could possibly want from a class. You know, it's got the brilliant warm-up. You work on your technical things when we do the corner work and the turns, and then we go into a big old routine which has got all of that in, plus more, plus the creativity and the inventiveness that keeps you thinking from start to finish. What more could you want from a class?
So often we rely on an external eye to track our progress, but I'm interested in professionals taking responsibility and ownership of their own development. It takes time and energy outside of the studio to design class, choreography, and exercises. I spent hours, evenings, weekends alone or with my assistants creating choreography and exercises in order to give the dancers the best experience possible. The design of the Reboot class was no different. Plus, we had to take into consideration COVID safety precautions. In the studio, we had 30 chairs around the perimeter of the room. Each dancer was assigned a chair which provided a home for them before, during, and after class, keeping them socially distanced and safe. Now, the first part of the class was actually not a problem at all, as it generally stays on the spot within a 2-meter square. The next part was tricky, because you have to take responsibility of how your exercises maneuver around the space. So, for instance, I couldn't just work from an upstage corner to the downstage corner because we know that dancers tend to pool in the downstage corners after they've been across the room, and with COVID, that's unsafe. We couldn't go from one side of the room to the other side of the room. As a dancer, you're trained not to stand in front of the musicians or the mirror, so you just tend to gather at the sides of the studio. So what we created was an ever-moving conveyor belt where everyone started at their home chair and then they feed down the center aisle of the studio. And as they reach the mirrors, they're able to feed back around again, eventually ending back home. I designed my exercises working from the back of the room to the front of the room, which is something I would never normally do in class. But by working in this way, we were able to socially distance the dancers and keep them safe. In order to achieve maximum reach for the project, I taught 3 classes a day to professional dancers, graduates from the 2020 cohort, and the 6 professional dancers we had employed for the Tracing Movement dance film. The whole reboot process was absolutely electrifying. We were able to see dancers do what they love to do, move and communicate with their bodies, and live in that space between their consciousness and their physical self. How your physical self and your consciousness communicate with each other is beautiful. And for me, that's dance. Similar to Tracing Movement Together, it's weird to think about the outcomes because it was more about the process. This time, I was able to work with over 100 dancers in real life, including the 6 professional artists who were also preparing and rehearsing my choreography.
Stuart's amazing. He really, really is. He knows what he's talking about. He's an incredible choreographer, incredible dancer, and I feel like a better dancer in that week alone.
People's faith needs to be restored. In a time that is so bleak anyway, it's so necessary to have an opportunity like this, to be given this chance. And like Stuart said today, it's not an audition, it's not an assessed class. It is just the ability to move and to be taught and to appreciate what we're being given. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for it.
Stuart is his biggest critic and I think his biggest champion all at the same time. He obviously had fantastic teachers that instilled that in him, but I think he was born that way. That fire was ignited later in life with dance, but I feel like it burns brighter than anyone else's.
With auditions and shows reopening in 2021, dancers need to be ready. I'm under no illusion that Reboot 1 was a pilot program. This isn't anywhere near enough to fix the problem that dancers and physical artists all over the globe have not been able to train and maintain their bodies. The plan is to do Reboot 2. It has to happen, the industry needs it to happen, and we'll find a way to make it happen. The idea to produce a film that existed on a stage was at the forefront of my mind, because currently we don't have a stage. The theatres in London are dark. Could I create something for the dancers that reminded them how it felt to perform again? And could I create work in a dark theatre to bring life back to the stage? I decided to call it Rebound. We were so grateful to collaborate with Theatre Royal Stratford East. They were offering their space to freelancers while they were preparing to bring productions back. They were so accommodating, and we couldn't have done this project without them. Keeping the dancers socially distanced at all times throughout the process made rehearsals tricky and made designing the choreography difficult. Rehearsal rooms are normally such a free and tactile environment, but when you take away that freedom, it's really hard to create choreography, transitions and formations while keeping everyone 2 meters apart. It was hard, but it wasn't impossible, and every rehearsal got easier, but it did take a lot of mapping and planning. We needed to know exactly what we were doing. We went into the rehearsal process alongside Reboot. I didn't want to overdo the rehearsals because, like everyone, the gents had had a lot of time off and we had to gradually bring their bodies back to performance level. We worked carefully through the choreography, and it wasn't until the filming days on the 6th and the 7th of November that we really changed gears and pushed a little bit harder, demanding more from them technically and emotionally. On the 31st of October, the government announced a second lockdown that would begin on the 5th of November. That was the day before we were due to film. We were unsure whether we'd be allowed to continue with the project under the new restrictions. There was a moment when we thought we'd have to postpone. But fortunately, the government guidelines permitted filming inside theatres, and on the 3rd of November, Stratford East called us to confirm that we could go ahead. I'll always remember that moment when the company and I walked through the stage door on the first day of filming. At Stratford East, you walk off the street and step straight onto the stage. You don't actually realise you're on the stage to begin with, but you can feel the rake, and as you turn the corner you see the gorgeous red and gold auditorium. Looking around and seeing everyone's faces on that first day was so special, because I think we felt like we were home. The filming schedule over the next 2 days was tight, but I had a team around me to make everything happen. Natasha Volley, Ben Thomas, Greg Bernstein, James Harris, Christy Lee Manning, James McKeon, they all worked relentlessly to complete the project. For those 2 days, I was actually able to forget that lockdown was actually happening outside. Rebound is a piece of art that lets you plug into the artist's experience. There's no fancy lighting or set, it just is what it is. A bare stage, a few lights, and some amazing performers. First, it shows you the cast warming up and preparing with their company members on stage. You get these visual glimmers of movement and a voice from the deputy stage manager delivering the various calls. By highlighting who these dancers are, we give them an identity. We feel connected to them and it makes them real. Robin Kent, Michael Duke, Justin Lee Jones, Ben Brown, Daniel Montero, and Lucas Hunt. I find the moment before a performance really interesting. That state that you put yourself in before a show is so personal and individual. It's like you're suspended in time. You're just waiting for the music to start. We then springboard into the choreography. It needed to feel like that we were on stage with the dancers. We needed to feel the exhilaration that they feel whilst dancing and moving around the space with each other. We're not viewing it from the auditorium. We are an audience, but we're on stage with them. The final moments in the film are representative of how dancers might currently feel with theatres still closed. We watch their decompression as we realise they don't have anyone watching their performance. When you wrap on a project, whether it's a rehearsal or a show or a film, that creative monster in you starts to talk. Did you do enough? Did you get all the shots you needed? Could the choreography be better? Could you have changed this? Could you have changed that? Did that pathway work? You question everything that you've done up to this point. It's the doubt and the fear that comes to the surface the moment that you're releasing control. But once you're able to let that go and hand it over, the only thing to do is to do it again. Let's do it again. I'm currently stood in Studio 7 at Jerwood Space. On the 27th of November 2020, the Jerwood Foundation funded Reboot 2, and on the 10th of May 2021, Reboot 2 started, and we finish at the end of this week. I'm absolutely exhausted, and it's been brilliant, and I just need to thank everyone who's financially made this happen and invested in London's dance network, and my whole team that have completely supported me and helped me get through this. It's just been brilliant.